Howard Marks here.
Welcome to our next episode of GreyBeards on Storage, excuse me, monthly podcast, a show where we get GreyBeards storage and system bloggers to talk with storage and system vendors to discuss upcoming products, technologies, trends affecting the data center today. Welcome to the 16th episode of GreyBeards on Storage, which was recorded on December 29th, 2014. This is our end of year podcast where we discuss trends in the storage and IT industry. We have a couple of topics to discuss today, and Howard and I have been talking offline to try to get the juices rolling here. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is the whole cloud computing and the takeoff there that's occurring and its impact on storage vendors. What do you think, Howard?
Well, it's certainly having an impact. You know, it's been trite for the past decade to say we're drowning in data. And a lot of that data is moving to the cloud. You know, some of it to services like Glacier, where it just makes sense to put your really cold data someplace where you don't have to worry about it. And it seems to me that we've reached the inflection point where the growth in the storage market and the growth of the cloud storage end of things have become equal.
Yeah.
And so now there isn't any growth in the traditional storage anymore because the data that would have been sucking up yet another VMAX is moving off into more cloudy applications.
Yeah, and I think the challenge here is that the new applications are now emerging already based on cloud. So they're using cloud storage, using cloud compute, using cloud, web services, for lack of a better word.
I mean, if you just look at CRM, 15 years ago, we were all talking about, installing CRM in the data center, and Salesforce killed that. Almost nobody does a big CRM implementation. They just buy as many licenses as they need for Salesforce. And that means all that data never ends up in the corporate data center at all. So, I am a big believer in software as a service. Something like clouds, like Salesforce, or I used to do consulting in the mid-market, and of course that meant I always had a few SMBs who said, my brother-in-law runs that $1 billion company, and he said you can help me. And my advice there, 5 years ago became don't run your own email.
Exchange.
It's
put it on Google Gmail.
Go with hosted Exchange. Go with Gmail. Pay somebody to do that. If you've got less than several hundred mailboxes, the overhead of running your own Exchange, which is still not as simple as it should be, just isn't worth it.
And you can even run Exchange in the cloud now and all that other stuff.
Oh, I do. You can go with Office 365. I use another hosted Exchange vendor because they had, a bigger mailbox deal that I liked. But, I can run Exchange, and I certainly have the infrastructure to do it. And I just don't think it, even for me, it's not worth it.
Yeah. I was talking to a customer the other day at, I think, an EMC analyst event. They have like a Documentum solution that's a software as a service, right? So it's a compliance document management system, which is all online. It's all in the cloud and all that stuff. So
yeah, and as long as you do the homework to make sure that you've got the redundant internet connections that you need when your key applications aren't on premises, why not?
So the big challenge from enterprise storage vendor perspective is that all that, like you say, on-premise data, on-premise storage now, although it's not going away, it's just not growing at the same clip it was at one time, huh?
Right, and so now we've got the established vendors and the upstarts that are kind of unique. We haven't seen the group of the Nimbles and the Pures that are perfectly viable vendors, but not HP or EMC or HDS. Right. If you are a Fortune 500 company, you could buy from Pure or Nimble and not have your CIO go, "What are you, nuts, buying from a startup?"
Yeah.
But we've got now this larger group of vendors fighting over a static, and what we've got to assume 3 years from now might be even a declining market.
At least on
And
prem wise.
right.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, the cloud guys don't buy
They know.
in general the kind of storage that enterprise guys do. I mean, I've written about several times about how you shouldn't run your data. You shouldn't take Facebook and Google as the design for how you should run your data center,
Right.
because they have one application and millions of servers and you have millions of applications, and
And
the world is just different.
right, right, right.
Um, and part of that is those guys don't buy storage
Yeah.
the way corporate guys buy storage, because resiliency is an application function, not an infrastructure function.
Right.
And so they can buy much less resilient storage.
And it's just performance, because performance is all from an application perspective, all built into the application rather than infrastructure.
Right. You shard, you have essentially
Yeah.
DAS, you shard it across more and more servers.
And
Or you take high density servers and you build high density
right,
storage where, if you're YouTube, performance is streaming
right,
performance, not
right,
IOPS. And disks
right,
do fine for
right,
that.
right, right. And the challenge for the enterprise storage vendors is how to go out and grab some of that data that's growing out there in the cloud.
Right. The what part of what the enterprise storage vendors are trying to do is to say, how can we do something like Viper
Yeah.
that would be attractive for not Google and Amazon and Microsoft and Rackspace, but the next tier of guys who only have 2 PhDs instead of 7 PhDs.
Or 70. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
in where there's some level of or the SaaS providers who may have an application, Salesforce
Right.
runs on Oracle.
Right. Right.
It feels and has to be supported with infrastructure much more like a corporate application
Yep.
than Facebook or YouTube,
Right.
which don't have those infrastructure resiliency requirements because they're not based on conventional database architectures.
Right. 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 Yeah, well, that's the challenge. That's the challenge for the next, God, 6 to 7 years, I would say, from an enterprise storage place perspective. How to play that game, how to play well, and how to grab some of that margin and data that's going elsewhere.